Without health, there's hardly anything we can achieve. Yes, we can set goals and objectives, like many of us have already done, but achieving them, ascertaining that those things come to fruition, is our meaty matter today on Weekend Deal. Your health is integral to success. You are watching Weekend Deal. We can't wait to begin to tell you what we'll have for you, your health, and mine, of course. But first, this break. Weekend Deal. Last year, we tackled several issues, especially as it pertains to Nigeria and its citizens. One of them that we handled more than once was matters concerning health. We're taking a look at that again, and let's open up with that, and then we'll have an interview.
Nigeria, with its current population estimated at 184 million people, accounting for 20% of the African population, has 36 states and 774 local government areas. The country operates a presidential system of government. Consequently, the health care provision is a responsibility of all three tiers of government, with the federal government primarily responsible for tertiary health care, state government responsible for secondary care, and local government authority responsible for primary health care. How functional are the primary health care centers in Nigeria?
The state of primary health care in Nigeria is not as good as we would like it to be. There is nobody in Nigeria who is happy with the quality of primary healthcare services consistently in all states. Having said that, we recognize and acknowledge that in some of the states we have some primary healthcare centers that are functional. So all across the country, out of some 30,000 primary healthcare centers that exist, we are aware that only about 4,000 primary healthcare centers are functional. So you can imagine the gap between 4,000 and 13,000.
As an important element of national security, public health not only functions to provide adequate and timely medical care, but also track, monitor, and control disease outbreak.
We also acknowledge that this state of poor functionality of primary healthcare centers did not start yesterday. It did not start with this administration. This has come from decades of neglect of the primary healthcare centers. So successive governments have not invested enough in improving the quality of primary healthcare in the country. And this is why, with the advent of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, he made it a priority. He took time to launch the revitalization of primary healthcare in Kuchingoro in 2017. Since then, there's been a progressive revitalization of primary healthcare centers.
Nigeria has one of the largest health workers in Africa. But there are also some bad news for our healthcare system, as World Health Organization rate our healthcare system very low. How is the government checkmating quacks in the health sector?
Most of the ministries of health and the state primary healthcare boards have inspectorate units, right? So they go on spot checks to fish out some of those individuals who do not have the correct certification. to operate in primary healthcare centers. But you'll find that in most of the in the government institution, you will not find such quacks, because you will usually go through a very stringent and rigorous process before you are recruited into a primary healthcare center.
Because of the different layers of our health system, there are orthodox, alternative and traditional medicine in Nigeria, but the government is trying to regulate them all. However, the prevalent nature of self-medication and its consequences calls for urgent attention.
The dangers are, first of all, there might be wrong diagnosis. So the condition that they think they have may not even be the condition that they have in the first place. So they'll be taking a medication that is completely wrong and inappropriate for the condition that they have. Another thing is that they may be taking medication for longer than they should, which makes them susceptible to side effects that could be dangerous to their health.
There is dearth of clinical epidemiological information on the trial of influenza, malaria and typhoid fever co-infection in Nigeria, and the similarity of their clinical symptoms coupled with lack of vaccine and all-year-round circulation in sub-Saharan Africa has led to serious pediatric morbidity and mortality.
They all present with fever, they all present with weakness, that general feeling of being unwell, some body pain. But the funny thing is that the flu is caused by a virus. Malaria is caused by a group of organisms we call the protozoa organisms, transmitted by the mosquito, as we all know. And then typhoid is transmitted by bacteria. So you can see that these are three different families. They may be in the same village, but they're from different families. And because they appear similar, especially in the initial stages, individuals tend to feel some symptoms and decide it must be malaria, or it must be typhoid, or it's flu, based on maybe something that has happened to them in the recent past. And so it also boils down to the need to present for a comprehensive medical check and necessary tests before some of these diagnoses are arrived at.
It is believed that universal health coverage remains the best approach to solving health inequality and promoting access without compromising quality of care.
Hope is here. For the first time, we now have funding from the federal government. We now have state governments also prioritizing primary health care. So we are optimistic that in the next few years, we begin to see changes in our primary health care space.
Thank you, Francis. It's very obvious to all of us that without health, we can hardly achieve anything. And it behoves on each and every one of us to preserve our health the best that we can. And that's how we'll talk about lifestyle and the cost of technology with regard to health.
Technology is here to stay. It has become part of our lives. It has the potential to improve lives positively in education, health, and general welfare. But in some cases, it can also negatively affect physical and emotional health. According to the American Optometric Association, prolonged use of computers, tablets, and cell phones can lead to eye strain.
There's an umbrella term that describes the effect of prolonged periods of staring at the screens, either of the mobile phone, of a computer, or of a television screen, and it's called computer vision syndrome. So what that syndrome refers to are those negative effects that arise from that prolonged use of the telephone, of screens in any way, telephone, computer, or TV. The first one would be eye strain, which is where the eyes, how the eye functions is that there are muscles that help the eye move from left to right, up or down to focus. And so where an individual is for a prolonged period staring at a screen, those muscles could come under strain and lead to eye pain. There could also be dryness of the eye.
When you use a smartphone, for instance, the chances are that you are holding your head in an unnatural forward-leaning position. This position puts a lot of stress on your neck, shoulder and spine.
Most of us will look at the text below and be hunched over reading text messages. So that over time has a way of straining the bones of the spine, the upper neck. And so they can become stiff, they can become sore, they can become painful. It may vary from individual to individual and also depends on how often people hunch over to look at their phone screen.
Technology in the bedroom can interfere with sleep in a number of ways because exposure to the blue light that devices emit can make it harder to fall asleep and result in you being less alert in the morning.
There's a hormone in the body that helps the body to start shutting down for bedtime, and that hormone is called melatonin. So what that blue light does is that it suppresses the body secreting that hormone. And so individuals find it difficult going to sleep, and even when they do go to sleep, they find it difficult maintaining that sleep and sleeping sufficiently. So over time, they may be chronically tired over long periods. They are not as alert because they are not getting sufficient sleep. So what people can do is at least 30 minutes to 1 hour before you know you're going to bed, shut down your phone and put it away. And for people who may feel like it's always easier for them to read something before they go to bed, then read a good book. Read an actual paper book. And at least that one doesn't emit any form of blue light.
Technology plays a role in virtually every part of our lives, whether we are aware of it or not, but its overuse can have adverse effect on your well-being.
My advice to people concerning the use of phones is that we should use the phones and not let the phones drive or direct us. We should have clear-cut, we should be intentional about the use of our phones. We should know that these are devices that could be harmful. And so we tailor the way we use them in terms of our posture, in terms of timing, and not letting phone use compromise on our day-to-day interaction with others, our relationships, and of course our rest and our sleep.
With each new advancement in technology, it gets a bit easier to go overboard. When we get too caught up in it, we can feel it in our minds and bodies. But how much is too much?
Thank you again, Francis. Lifestyle and the cost of technology to health. But what's important, lifestyle came first. That means the journey must start with you. Your health really is in your hands. We want to talk about the National Health Insurance Scheme. You know that it is set up to cater to the health needs of Nigerians, and that's why we've invited the Executive Secretary, Professor Mohammed Nasir Sambo, to chat with us and tell us what it's been like and where we are now. Great to have you join us, sir.
Thank you, Ma. Good morning, viewers.
National Health Insurance Scheme. We know it's been there a while. How would you say it has fared with regard to handling, taking care of the health needs of Nigerians to a large extent?
The simple answer to this question is that we will say that NHIS is faring, but there is a lot that needs to be done, and that's exactly what we are trying to do in the National Health Insurance now. It has been around for the past, say, 23 years now. But if you want to really assess and critically assess the performance of the organization in terms of what it has achieved, you have to look at the totality of the situation, ranging from the law that has established the organization, how the organization was established, and how the governance and the leadership of the organization, and what are the operational issues and the bottlenecks that has helped or militated against the attainment of the optimum result that NHI is supposed to have been achieved. Talking from the perspective of the law, the actual law was established in 1999 by Decree 35, just at the verge when the military was leaving the scene of government, and the law unfortunately was not made to be a mandatory law. And wherever you want to have an all-encompassing health insurance, first and foremost, the law has to be mandatory, so that all efforts will now be put in place to ensure that everybody comes on board. But that of the Nigeria was not made mandatory; it was optional. Because if you look at the provision of the law where it says that an employer and employee, the initial draft of the law was shall pay contribution. But at the point when the law was coming out, it was say the employer and employee may pay contribution. So, you know, in legal parlance, the shall and may are different things.
Very different.
Shall is compulsory, whereas may is optional. So because it was made optional, the real provision of the health insurance has not been implemented. Because if it has been a mandatory, all the federal government employees, all the state government employees, all the local government employees would have spontaneously come into the health insurance without any encumbrance. To benefit. And all the private sector organizations and their employees it would have come into the health insurance ab initio, and that will pave way for the self-employed people that have capacity to join the national health insurance. I was just
going there. Self-employed or no employment at all.
Yes, no employment, no money. No money, no health insurance, because one fundamental thing that people need to understand, because if you don't understand them, you will hardly understand the mechanism of action of health insurance. I think these principles are very clear, and I will seize opportunity to mention it. Number one, health insurance is not free. It's not a free health. It is a mechanism of financing healthcare. Among other options of financing healthcare system, whereby resources or funds are pooled together and the risks are pooled together. So somebody must pay. Either you are an employee, your employer should pay part of it, you pay part of it, or you are self-employed, you pay and your family, or you are a vulnerable, which you therefore be entitled to subsidy by the government. By vulnerable, we mean people who have no capacity to pay. In every country, you will have the category of those people that cannot be able to pay. So government has to make provision for them.
But for now, are such people accommodated?
Yes, they are partially accommodated within the health insurance through what is called the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. It is an arrangement, it is a legal framework passed by the National Assembly to ensure that 1% of the total revenue of the federal government comes into the national health system, out of which 50% of that 1% will go to the National Health Insurance Scheme. It is called Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, and that money is transmitted to the state health insurance agencies, because in Nigeria we operate what we call decentralized social health insurance. You have a health insurance at the federal government, at the federal level, which is taking care of all the employees of the health of the federal government, and all the, which is supposed to also take care of all the people that are within the private sector organization that are large and beyond one state. So the fund, the state government are also having their own state health insurance agencies. Their own role is to actually cover the state employees and the local government.
Is it working well in the states?
We could technically say that the state health insurance agencies operation has just commenced. So it's too early in the day to determine, because they have just finished establishing structures, the agencies, and the law establishing the organizations, and some of them are doing very well. Like if you go to Lagos, you see that they have gone far. If you go to Delta State, you see that they have gone far in their state health insurance. You go to Kano, you see that they have gone far. So they are coming up. And
we expect better results.
Yes.
We are discussing this because it is critical to the survival of many Nigerians. Even for elites or wealthy people, the cost of healthcare can make quite a dent. It can make one very uncomfortable. So it is imperative that we not just have it as a cover, that it impacts us health-wise. And many people have had experiences that are not so laudable. For example, you go to a healthcare facility that is NHIS compliant, and they tell you they can only treat some things, they cannot treat some other things, even with children. And it can be, beyond it being a disappointment, I mean, you can begin to ask, I've heard people ask the doctors there, what do you want me to do? Because out-of-pocket cost sometimes is not an option.
Yeah, that's when I was talking about the principles underpinning the health insurance. Unless it is understood, these complaints will keep on coming. We have been trying to understand the principle underpinning a subject matter. Unless that principle is understood, we will not have problem. The number one, I say that health insurance is not free. That's one of the principles. Somebody has to pay for it.
Well, we're already paying for it.
Fine.
To an extent.
Number two, the amount that you collect as a health insurance fund determine the level of coverage that you can give. For example, let's do a comparative analysis of Nigeria and Turkey. The health insurance in Turkey is collecting premium, and if you look at the amount of premium that is generated is driven from the minimum wage, the wages of the workers. And if you compare the minimum wage of 400,000 and the minimum wage of 30,000, and you pull them together, maybe say 5% of the minimum wage of 30% of 30,000 naira is the one that is due for the National Health Insurance Scheme. And on the other hand, in another country, you have a minimum wage of 400,000, and you are collecting 5%, for example. So the amount that you gather will determine what benefit package you will cover. If I have a small amount of funds generated because of the fact that the economy of my society is not good, and therefore the amount of salary that people are getting is minimum. So you will now have a situation whereby that contribution is very small, and since it is not free, it has to be financed by that amount of money that is generated.
However little it is.
However little it is. So based on the amount that is so collected, the actuarial scientists will now determine what spectrum of cover should be undertaken with that money.
Okay, sir, we've spent quite some time arranging the challenges, speaking it in English. You know, we're going forward with it. Okay, we've heard you. Going forward, how is it going to get better? Is it going to get better?
Absolutely.
So it's the good news that many Nigerians would be interested.
Yes, the good news is that another principle is that the bigger the pool, the more people get into the National Health Insurance ecosystem, the more fund you have to do what is called cross-subsidization. If I am sick and you are well and we are contributors, my own fund will be used, your own fund will be used in treating me, and vice versa. That's the principles behind operations of the National Health Insurance Scheme. So when you have a very larger pool, assuming you have a mandatory social health insurance bill, whereby everybody is now coming to contribute, you have a very large pool.
When would that be?
By the time the law of the National Health Insurance Scheme is amended.
When will that be?
Anytime soon. Anytime soon. By the grace of God, 2022. We are in 2022. By the grace of God, because the law has been signed as has been passed by the National Assembly, but there were when it was transmitted there were some observations, and it has been returned. Those observations have been corrected, and we are hoping that by the time it goes to the presidency this time around, we will have a mandatory social health insurance law that will bring many people into the system
and make life better for many people.
Absolutely.
It is the hope of many Nigerians that more people will be included, more health challenges will also be absorbed.
Yes.
So that Nigerians really feel the impact, because the way things are, some people are even amazed that there's even any chance. Some hear it, they even think that it's about to start. You're watching Weekend Deal. I'm having a chat with Professor Mohammed Nasir Sambo, Executive Secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme. We will continue our conversation, but we'll continue to enlighten you with health matters. And let's say this.
With the numerous health challenges currently in Nigeria, ranging from communicable to non-communicable diseases, it is important to combat falsified, substandard and counterfeit pharmaceutical products. The Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, PSN, reveals that at least 70% of the drugs in circulation in Nigeria are fake, and most substandard drugs are being imported from other countries. Most of the pharmaceutical companies in the country have not been able to fully navigate these challenges, which makes the operation in Nigeria suboptimal.
One of the challenges we have is porous borders, okay, because you have a lot of our drug supply being dependent on importation, okay. Local production has been facing several challenges, of course, you know, with electricity and several local challenges associated with manufacturing, so that we have leaned over the years heavily on importation. The people that fake, remember that their motivation is mostly money, okay? So they look at diseases that are either very frequent in occurrence. So you're looking at things like malaria, like the common cold, you know, things that happen every year. You're guaranteed that people will have within it, that seasonal, things like that. Or they're looking at chronic diseases. So you have diseases where, you know, somebody who is diabetic, who is hypertensive, they take these medications for a long period of time. So it's like big market in the minds of these people who are faking. So the NAFDAC is aware of that and knows to target those. Now, unfortunately, with a pandemic, you also have the upsurge of use of certain types of drugs, because there's just a limited number of drugs that are of benefit to somebody who is infected with COVID. About 10 years ago, you know, we were looking at a really terrible statistics where we had about 16.7% compared to the global average of about 10%, okay? The goal of NAFDAC was to reduce that to about 5% at least by the year 2024. Right now here we are 3 years away from that. I would say that with the efforts of NAFDAC, there has been a lot of improvement, except that with the global pandemic and all the challenges associated with that, there has been a challenge again, an upsurge.
We still import products, pharmaceutical products, from countries like India and China, which of course we know these countries have been labeled among the top 5 for fake drugs. We have unlicensed distributors. We have market hubs that market these products. And this especially in remote areas where they are non-educated, they just take what they are being given. You can imagine taking fake drugs. A fake drug is being circulated in the system, treating for the management of hypertension. And then somebody is taking it unknowingly. And then you feel you are being treated. The BP keeps skyrocketing, going higher and higher, and every day it tends towards stroke. And then maybe the patient tends to die.
And you get anyone for migraine?
These falsified drugs contain bad substances like chalk in tablets and milk in capsules with little or none of the active ingredients. Evidence mounts that some fake drug producers are propagating this act for monetary reasons and also consciously spreading infections like HIV and AIDS and the trending coronavirus. These actions question the place of patriotism in Nigeria.
It's the kind of thing that is like sending out something that can just explode and damage anybody, and you can't control who. So please, if you are somebody who is involved in any way, whether in the importation, in the purchase, in the distribution of these things, please think of your family, think of yourself. You cannot possibly want to enrich yourself by killing yourself. We have a lot of patriotic Nigerians. I believe that strongly. But what happens is what bad news makes the news. Unfortunately, even people outside the country, they hear about all this bad stuff, and it looks like if Nigeria is bad.
Being patriotic might mean that I see a case of an illegal drug somewhere, and then I bring it up. We are here to help ourselves. The government cannot do it alone. NAFTA cannot do it alone. Let's ensure that these drugs are being gotten or procured from reliable sources, from licensed practitioners, pharmaceuticals.
Despite these challenges, the revised National Health Promotion Policy 2019 is meant to empower the Nigerian populace with information and also timely actions to improving the health and well-being of the average Nigerian.
I know that there was a time in our nation's history when the challenge of fake and substandard drugs was so immense that many people passed on, because we heard of painkillers being made with powder. Many factories were shut down at that time. And we want to ask the Executive Secretary of NHIS, Professor Mohammed Nasir Sambo. Let's talk to him about fake and substandard drugs. Now that NHIS has been established for many years, we still have some release talk about accessing substandard drugs. We don't know if it's fully fake, the chalk type, in terms of painkillers and other medicines, but they are there. So what we would like to know from you, sir, is there any way you monitor the drugs being given to those who access NHIS, or are there checks and balances, or do you just take a little money from what we earn and then just leave us out there and forget all about us?
Yeah, thank you very much. This question, it has been a recurring decimal. But what I want people to understand, that there are different agencies of government with their different mandates. NHIS is not mandated by law to be the one that will be checking fake and substandard drugs. NHIS is a strategic purchasing agency. We don't have hospitals, we don't have doctors, we don't have equipments, we don't have drugs. We accredit hospitals that have fulfilled the standard of operation as enshrined in our guidelines. Then we register them, then we get into business with them. The issue of fake and substandard drugs is within the purview of a sister agency of Federal Ministry of Health, which is NAFDAC. They are supposed to ensure that every drug that is in this country and is being consumed by people are of good quality and good standard. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the mandate. So if there are fake drugs within the healthcare facilities, NHIS will not know. So the agency that is responsible is supposed to know to fish it out and ensure that standard drugs are. So when we see a drug in the healthcare facility, ours is, we believe that they are of good standard. And even if they are of low standard, we don't know. But let me differentiate between what is standard and what is not, what is quality and what is not quality drug from the perspective of the health insurance. When you have a generic drug, the drugs come in two types. You have what is called generic, which is a name of the drugs in their own chemical composition, and you have what is called branded drug. So when you first manufacture a drug, it will come in a generic name. And the company that first bring out that drug will now brand it in its name before the patent is open to other companies to also manufacture it. So generic drug ideally, there is no difference between what is a generic drug and what is a branded drug. Branded drug, they are drugs that have been nicknamed. Let me put it that way. You have your name, and you have you are a queen. Maybe you are Thelma. Then you acquire a status of a Queen Thelma. So that everybody knows you with your name as Thelma. But because you have acquired something, then they now call you. But that does not change who you are. That does not change the composition. And if you are doing a drug list in any country, there is what is called national drug list. The national drug list, they come in a generic name. You don't have a national drug list that is in branded name. So what is happening at the healthcare facility level? The healthcare providers will have drugs that are generic, and they have drugs that are branded. Normally, branded drugs are more expensive. But in terms of potency and efficacy, they are supposed to be the same.
Okay, but can I just hold your thought a minute, or your train of conversation or explanation? All these things we're saying, is semantics to a large extent for the layman or the laywoman. For people who have had their siblings or their parents or relatives or friends suffer immensely to the extent that some of them have demised because of fake and substandard drugs. What we're saying, it's English language. If you were to have some time with the DG of NAFDAC now, with this information I've given you, which is politely saying that there may be some substandard drugs there, would you pass on the information to her so perhaps they can improve due diligence?
Absolutely. Why not? Because it's about mandate. It's about mandate, and it's not really semantic, because we are talking about generic and branded. An average person believes that branded drug is standard drug, generic drug is fake. So when they go to healthcare facilities and they are prescribed generic drug, they will say that it is a substandard drug that has been prescribed to them.
That is not the direction we are heading. We are talking about the after effects. When the person takes drugs, or you've been buying drugs from a particular pharmacy or a particular company, or I don't know how they get their license or whatever, and then people who have taken medicine for malaria or medicine for other diseases do not recover. They take over and over, and some of them pass on. And then after like 2 months, in some cases, we've come to see that security agencies come and lock up some companies and tell us that what was there, what they were making, was chalk, was powder, and we're mixing it together.
Yes. For us in the National Health Insurance Scheme, as I said, it's a mandate thing. But if there is a failure if somebody is said to have been taking a drug and he died at the end of the day, as a doctor, I won't say it is the substandard drug that has killed him. I will start asking whether the diagnosis that has been made is right or wrong, whether he is taking a right drug or not.
But do you think there are fake drugs, fake and substandard drugs in our country?
I just saw your report that is being mentioned, but it's a fact. Okay. So a lot of work has to be done to eliminate. There are so many initiatives that other countries have done to see that there is, like as I talk about Turkey, if there is one, because the value chain for the drug system is so watertight that every drug that has gone into the system is detected. So from the manufacturers to the recipient, the drugs are tracked.
Perhaps we'll get there someday.
Someday, we are hoping. If there is an infiltration of a fake drug, the system will detect it and it will eliminate it.
We pray we get there.
We pray we get there.
The concern and the care with which you have discussed all the issues and the patience tells me that you take the ethics, the oath, and all of that very seriously. But I have one message here. Let me just, okay, several, but I'm told I can only take one. The scheme is a welcome development. That's the NHI scheme. Yes. Is a welcome development to all federal workers based on the provision of health services. However, in terms of drugs, I will score NHIS 25%. I say because expensive drugs are not always available at the pharmacy. I think your explanation has handled some of that, okay? And you didn't tell us who you are and where you reached out to us from. You know, I hope you listened to Prof's detailed explanation. So I hope you took a thing or two from that.
The notion of expensive shouldn't come. We are not talking about expensive. You say expensive has to do with branding and psychology. Okay. If you insist that we tell you as experts that generic and branded are the same, as experts we have told you. So you need to agree with us, to believe in us, that these drugs that bear different name are one and the same. This one is branded by the name of company. Like if a big company brand a drug, people will tend to believe that this drug is coming from that big company. Okay. And therefore it is superior. We have to do a lot to debunk that notion. Okay. And ensure that we track the drug and ensure, the medicine supply, I think, will address all these issues.
Okay, but when people say expensive, they're referring to, you know, the out-of-pocket expenses, what they have and what they need to bring out to pay for a particular medicine for a particular ailment, maybe for one member of the family. And if they look at what they have for the rest of the month, they are wondering what else is left.
Yeah, that has to do with income and how much. Yes. In fact, that is the hallmark of health insurance. I think that is what this person was referring to. But anyway, more messages are coming in, but we have to let you go now. Okay. We want to thank you for your patience, for your calm throughout. You know. We pray that all what you have worked assiduously towards for NHIs and for Nigerians will come to fruition very soon. Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Nasir Sambo, Executive Secretary, National Health Insurance Scheme. Thank you very much.
It's been a real pleasure. You are watching Weekend Deal. We're talking your health. We will take a break now. We ask you to stay with us. That package, of course, is throwing more light on what we're marking today. That is the Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day. The Nigerian Armed Forces maintains the territorial integrity of Nigeria, talking about land, the sea, and air. And, of course, they defend the country on all fronts. That's why we're having a chat with Major General Abdul Malik Jibril, retired. He's the national chairman of the Nigerian Legion. Great to have you with us on Weekend Deal.
Thank you very much, Thelma.
For a while, we've been marking Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day every January 15th, and this year is no different. What is the significance of marking this day?
Well, thank you very much. 15th of January is specifically set aside to remember and honor the veterans, that's the members of the armed forces of Nigeria who have made true sacrifice in various international, national, regional operations where they have put their lives on the line. And as a result, many of them died. If you take history back, since 1914, during the First World War, and of course 1945 when the Second World War ended, at that time we are not independent. Still, Nigerian troops were, if I may say, fought alongside the colonial masters, and many of them died in that war, in those wars. And then after independence, 1966, you remember the unfortunate situation that occurred in Nigeria, where we had the first time the military intervention and then subsequent civil war for 30 months. Those are period that we look back with sadness. And of course, a lot of soldiers, members of the armed forces of Nigeria, sacrificed their lives and died. Then thereafter, in the United Nations, under the United Nations flag, and also under the ECOMOG, the West African Regional Force that was set, and the participation in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and under the African Union, operation in Sudan. All those are areas where our troops, members of the armed forces of Nigeria, made supreme sacrifice. And then we come right into Nigeria. There are various several internal security operations that our troops have participated, and as today, as you know, in the Northeast, where we are facing the insurgency, and then of course in the Northwest, where we have the banditry, North Central, and part of even across the country, a lot of this. So Nigerian armed forces are all involved in all those, and these are not a picnic operation. They are real war situation where soldiers put their lives on the line, and they do all this in order, one, taking back to the history to keep the world in peace, then coming back home to keep Nigeria one and to keep us in peace, and for putting their lives on the line, for fighting on behalf of Nigeria. That's why we have the freedom we're having. That's why we sleep with our eyes closed.
Because they are working relentlessly.
That's right. So, and that is the significance of this day, therefore, is to remember those fallen heroes in a solemn situation and sympathize with the families they left behind, the widows and their dependents. So this day, 15th January, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day specifically is set aside to solemnly remember the sacrifices of the fallen heroes. And he also sympathized with the members of the family that were left behind, and to see how the government will assist them.
Interesting. Of course, that's what the Legion works assiduously towards. I know that it goes beyond the emblem we're wearing. Well, we in the media have been using this for quite a while, and of course, many government functionaries and indeed a lot of Nigerians have been wearing this. But beyond wearing this, what is expected to happen to encapsulate this marking of this fallen heroes?
Well, this emblem is just a symbol. It's a symbolic gesture. You see, in other clans we call it poppy. We call it here emblem, and it is put and do it for this period of solemn remembrance of the sacrifices made. We put it until tomorrow. After tomorrow, 15, we no longer wear it until another 15 January.
Let's do that again. After today, 15.
After the 15th of January, that on the 16th, you will not see anybody wearing it again. That marks the end. The climax of this activity is the 15th January. So, after wearing it is to actually sensitize the members of the public. To ask questions, what is this? This is one in remembrance of those who have sacrificed their lives for us, the citizens of this country, to have the peace that we are enjoying. And now, because of the challenges, I may call it the relative peace. But before this challenge, we are enjoying a very peaceful atmosphere. And it was attributed to the contribution made by the members of the armed forces of Nigeria, sacrificing them. So it's a symbol to wear it, and people will ask questions what it is all about, and it is to remember. And when you remember, you also know that the family that were left behind, they need the attention of the general public. That attention is sympathy. Not only sympathy, but also contribute in whatever form that you can through the Nigerian Legion, which is mandated to actually oversee the welfare of the members of the veterans that made their sacrifice and their dependent. So that is the significance.
Interesting. We will talk about the activities that will be taking place, perhaps briefly, at the Eagle Square later today. But let's come back to Nigerians. The armed forces is working assiduously year in, year out, 24/7 every day to keep us safe the best they can, and it has been going on for years, like you have enumerated. So what ought to be our responsibility as Nigerians?
The responsibility of Nigerians is to come en masse, give public support to our heroes that are in the field, in the theater, as we are talking now, in the northeast, in the south, in the northwest, where we are facing more serious the insurgency in the northeast and the banditry in the northwest and part of north central Kaduna and part of
come out in what form? Pray for them?
Yeah, prayer is one which has been marked on last Friday. And then the Christian on the 9th also held a national prayer. The Muslim held a national prayer in the national mosque, and the Christian held on the national Christian center for national prayer for the armed forces, both those who are in the field and those who have also made this full sacrifice. And that is one support. Second support is to actually know and be sensitized that that person that is in the field fighting, and any moment he could lose his life, is also a member of a family in this society. Is a father, is a son, and a husband. So sometimes even a daughter. Yes, exactly, because there are a lot of women too that are in the military. They also contribute their own ways. So the support we are talking about is, one, remembering and also to sympathize with the families that they left. And how do you sympathize? In terms of physical respect. That when you see a soldier that is maimed, you don't just despise him. You don't know what led to that. It's not his choice that he wants to be like the way he is. But it was in the course of defending this country, in the course of trying to give peace to us. That's why that's why they were taken, and they signed up to go and put their lives on the line. In other climes, members of the armed forces are highly respected, even in public places. If you go to the airport, they have a separate line, a queue. Even to board, they give them preference. Even to buy the air ticket, they will get a rebate, and so many things extended to them. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, it's not like that, and that is due to ignorance of the level of sacrifice. If all of us are asked to line up and say, go and pick arms and go and fight to keep this country, a lot will not by choice. But those who have taken it as a matter of responsibility to do that, we should
give them the regard and respect and the honor that they deserve. Interesting. Yes. On a final note, some activities are hallmarked today at the Eagle Square to formally wrap up the Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Can you give us a brief?
Today, 15th January, we will see it's the laying of the wreath. It's a symbolic activity. You lay the wreath. It's a bunch of flowers in memory of those who have sacrificed their lives. So Mr. President, he's the Vice President, the Senate President, Speaker, Chief Justice of the Federation, they will go either one after the other or in line to go and lay the wreath. And then bow they have themselves before laying the wreath and then come back. And they stand, another set will go, and so on and so on, including the members of diplomatic corps. So after that, myself as chairman, I will also with the appointed member of the widows will go and lay the wreath on behalf of the memory of those fallen heroes. That's what it takes. And then, of course, after that, the president will release the pigeons. A symbolic gesture. Yes.
I want to thank you for making the time. We know how busy your schedule is today, all the arrangements. Today is the grand finale, it's the peak of this event, and you've been quite busy. We wish you all the best, not just today, but always.
Thank you very much.
And we pray that Nigerians continue to honor, respect, and give high regard, not just to those who are fallen, but also to their families and those who are currently serving the Nigerian Armed Forces.
Thank you very much, NTA, for finding it very necessary to have this program to enlighten the members of the public. This is what we are liking. A lot of people don't know why we are celebrating and what it's all about, what they need to do to show support. So thank you for making this possible.
Thank you, Major General Abdul Malik Jibril, retired, the national chairman of the Nigerian Legion. You're watching Weekend Deal. A break beckons. We ask you to stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue in a moment.
God indeed bless Nigeria. Let's take a few messages. Before we took that brief package on the armed forces, we were talking with Executive Secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme. So a few messages have come talking about this scheme. Want to just take one or two. Adeyemi says, Executive Secretary, kindly let routine checkup be added to NHIS to encourage prevention rather than cure. He says so far the NHIS does not cover routine checkups. Okay, Shedrack Agbefo Viva says that NHIS is doing very well so far, but a lot more must be done in terms of provision of the medicines that patients need. It was great talking with the national chairman of the Nigerian Legion, Major General Abdul Malik Jibril, retired. Of course, you saw that we had a chat with the Executive Secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme, Professor Mohammed Nasir Sambo. We spoke at length, and there's a lot to look forward to. Talking about our health and what can be provided for us so that we stay well. But more important, you have a lot to do on your own. Imbibe great habits. Eat well. Exercise as often as you can. Stay happy. Forgive as soon as something happens that upsets you, and continue to pray for our great country, Nigeria. To be our pleasure to have your company again on Weekend Deal, bright and early tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. From everyone here, the entire production crew, we say thank you for being there.